Hey YouTube, so a couple minutes ago I just told the guy that I talked to from up in New York that I did not get the gasket set yet, and 5 minutes after I told him that, Napa called me, and so I went and picked it up. So we got the head gasket, really nice set here. We got the three cork seals for the fuel injectors, which is something I didn't expect. Inside here is the copper gaskets then for the fuel injectors, top and bottom, which is nice. And then the head gasket, intake, exhaust, and we have a valve cover gasket there. So we're looking like we're in good shape. Everything should be good from what I can tell here. So I'm going to start to, and then here are the seals. There's only 3 intake, 3 exhaust. I figured, you know what, it's not that much. I had a lot of encouragement on YouTube to go ahead and do the whole job, so I'm going to do that. So, even though Bullseye wanted to go out hunting today. So anyway, I picked up a container of Permatex water mix valve grinding compound. It's actually pretty nice stuff. I'm used to the stuff in the tube, but this isn't bad. It's very gritty, that's for sure. So what I've done then is I've put some valve grinding compound, that's it, the dark color you see there, onto the tip of the valve. You want to be careful with this stuff. You don't want to get any on the shaft here if you can help it, right here, because it will goof that up on you. Valve grinding compound is some nasty stuff as far as affecting the tolerances and things. So anyway, we're going to put that back in here, and now depending upon who's who and who does what, I've had 2 different guys tell me, and I'm talking old timers, tell me 2 different ways. I don't know if one guy was lazier than the other, but so you have a tool here then. You have a tool here with a suction cup on it. You can put a little bit of moisture on there, spit on it, whatever you want to do, and that grabs a hold of the valve. So one guy that taught me to do this, you can use a drill. The other guy says you should do it like you're making a fire. It doesn't seem to me that it would matter either way, because technically even if you do use the drill, I mean, when they actually do the grinding of this stuff, they use a milling machine, and it wouldn't be any different than what we're doing here. So what we're after is to mate the face of the valve to the face of the head and get a nice smooth finish on that. You can sort of tell by the sound. You can tell by the sound of the grinding. It sounds a little coarse to start off with, then it gets finer and finer as the grit breaks down and as you cut into the head. So you don't want to go too crazy with this. The other thing that I've been taught is that the edge or the face of the valve, you don't want just the very edges to be lapped. You want the middle lapped so that there's a big seal. Now if you look at that, I've already been doing this. This is not the first time I started doing this particular one, but what I'm saying is you can see that clear line is actually getting wider on there. But this edge down in here, you want a part of that to be seated against the head. So it's just a matter of working through it, wiping it off, checking it, and looking through it. The book tells you how it should seat, you know, in the angle that it should be. Naturally, I can't measure that angle at this point, but I can get a good feel for how this thing is working. It doesn't take really a long time to do this, but you do want it to mate together good. And then after I do that, I'm going to be cleaning this head off, but I'm going to change all the valve seals and get this over with. So That's what I'll be doing today. And naturally, when I got back from the store, or from Napa, even though this morning was sunny, it is now raining. So, in fact, it started off as freezing rain and turned to rain. So, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get out there. I'm not going to be working out there in the rain trying to put this together because I don't want any mistakes. Hopefully tomorrow it'll be sunny in the morning. I can get most of this back together. I don't know if you can hear. I don't know if you can hear that, but as you turn this, the compound breaks down as well as the seats on both the valve and the seat in the head starts to wear in. It has like a smoother feel to it. It gets just smoother and smoother. It's kind of like when you feel the saw blades, you know, you got to use your fingers the best you can to get a feel for things. You'd be surprised what kind of tolerances you can endure with your fingers. Might not be able to measure them too well, but it's amazing what it can do. So I'll be working on this, and then when I go to clean the head and stuff, I'll show you that. Alright, so then, I don't know if the stove fan is running, and I don't know if that's going to interfere with this. Let me go shut it off a second. What I'm trying to get at here is I want you to be able to hear this, and I don't know if you're going to be able to. This microphone on this thing isn't that great, but you can barely hear that turning, okay, because the compound that was on there has broken down, wore off, and I do it 3 times until I get to this stage, until I get to this light stage. But you can hardly hear it. It feels very smooth as it's turning in there, okay? And one of the things with using the drill that always bothered me is that depending upon how fast you run the drill and everything, if you use a drill on this, you might end up goofing up the valve guide itself and making it, you know, wear for no reason. But it doesn't seem to bother it. But what you're after is this real smooth feeling and no noise in there. Okay, so let me take this off, and I'm going to wipe this really good. Let me just back you out a little bit here. Okay. So when you look at this, and it's hard for me to see this anymore, but I use a magnifying glass to look at it. You're looking for a very, very smoothness in the middle of the valve. Like you don't want it just on one edge or the bottom edge. You don't really want it to be smooth out this end or that end once you wipe it off. You want the entire face to have that gray on it, which is gives you an indication of what's been rubbing on here, and you know what you're cutting. And again, you want to be careful with this stuff. Like I'm putting the towel in the middle and rubbing outward, because this is, like I say, it can grind things pretty badly. Now, I don't know if you can see that. Let me try and zoom in here a little bit better. But if you'll notice, come on, focus. Let me back out a little bit. Yeah, you'll notice that the face of where the seat is there, okay, the seat is shiny from one edge to the other, and that's what you're looking for. You want that shiny edge. Now, I'm going to do this one more time because I think it could use it, but you're looking for that shiny wide face so that you get a good seal with the valve when it's closed. You don't want it just a little bit. You want the whole face to have it. You can start to see where it's shiny there. The shiny part, I need something to point with. Hold on. So right now, what I'm trying to say is the shiny part, you can see the shiny part at this edge up at the top here, and it's sort of in the middle a little bit. Okay, so this needs a little bit more grinding it to get a nice face on there, but that's what you're after. I mean, in the camera there, no, it's hard for me to, you can see this edge where I'm pointing right there, how that's shiny. You want to try and get that a little wider, that shininess, and then you're going to get a good seal on this. Now there's measurements and all that are written in the book. I don't need to know them because I can't measure them anyway on this angle. So for right now, all I'm doing is cleaning. Let me back up a little bit here. So what I'm doing is cleaning the valve off again. Okay, you can see that the grit has scratched the surface there. Now you don't want the surface to have the grit on it. You want it to be shiny. Okay, now it's getting shinier in here. I'm not talking about the edges now, I'm talking about the middle. It's getting shinier and smoother looking, like I can see the reflection of the light now that's above me in the ceiling, but I could not see the reflection before. So you use those natural things that occur to help you to determine what's happening here. And just so you know, this stuff comes in a container like this. I don't even use the main container, I just use this. I mean, you're talking about a very small amount of this stuff on here. I had a tube of valve grinding compound for 30 years. The only reason I'm not using the tube is because it hardened up. But that thing costs, I think, $6 today. It'll probably last, I know it'll outlast me. So I'm going to put that back in there now, and I'm going to work on this again. Now if you do it by hand like this, it takes a lot longer than if you use the drill. But like I say, it always bothered me about the valve guide. I've never had problems with it. But you should be able to hear that real rough sound. And if you put the drill on there and use the drill, right there, I don't know if you could notice it, right there the sound of the grinding compound got quieter. So as that gets smoother and smoother, and this tool used to be bigger, it's a lot easier to rub your hands through it. I cut it in half years ago and put these bits in here. The smoother this gets is what you're after. When it's real smooth and you're hardly feeling any drag on the turning of this. Now this is when you do it by hand naturally. When you hardly feel any drag and no noise, then you know that you're getting there. So if I do it 3 times, and that's how many times I do it, this will be my 3rd time, then I'm happy with that. But it's going to take me a little bit to get to that, to get that grit all worn down and, you know, cutting what I need cut. Of course, if I have a shiny piece, a shiny seat in one part and not another, then I'll keep grinding. So it's important that you look at the whole seat all the way around it. So I hope this helps, you know, somebody that maybe you don't have the money to go to a machine shop, and the machine shop is the way to go, especially if they can, you know, duplicate the seat and get the valve to match, which today it's almost, you know, a norm, which at one time it was not quite the norm to have a local machine shop, you know, do that for you. But anyway, this is just, you know, how you do it. Like I say, you can use the drill, you don't have to do it by hand, but It's a matter of sound and feel to get that valve lapped properly. Okay guys, so I'm finished with this, lapping this in. Now here's what I did with this. Let me back up and I'll tell you about this. Alright, first of all, what I do is I hold the head flat, I put the valve in after I'm done lapping it, and I spray something very thin on the top of it. I'm using this PB Blaster because it's thin. You could use mineral spirits, you could use whatever you want, but it has to be thin. You don't want anything, you don't want oil, okay? You want something that is very thin in, you know, in its fluidity. But anyway, then after you spray that to on the top. So in other words, what I do is I put the valve in, just with the pressure of the valve, I spray this on top with the valve flat, you know, with the head flat. Now I have it propped up here because I want to keep the top of the valve off. But what you do is you check it and see if you're losing any fluid. So if I am, it's so little that I can't tell. But you'll have that flat, you'll put it on and it'll actually stay there. Now that's when you know you've done a good job with the valve, okay, lapping it. You can also look inside there, and if you have any fluid running down the side, that tells you you can still do some lapping. Alright, so then once I do that, that's my check. Alright, yeah, I have no other way of checking whether this is going to be a good fit or not. And from what I have learned over the years doing engines, this works the best for me, and I haven't had any problems with this. Alright, so now you wipe that off, right? I've wiped the valve off. Let's see what you're seeing here. I've wiped the valve off and I've wiped this off. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to put this back in here because that paper towel is not getting everything off of there that it should. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the valve around a little bit, pull that back out. Now here's what I'm after. And I'm hoping that you can see this. What I'm after is that real shiny looking circle there. And that's, let me show you where it is. It's right here. This. All the way around. That's what I want. Now the wider that is, the better off you are. But what I've got there is probably around 15 to 25 thousandths. When I look in the book, they're calling for around that. So I'm going to let this go. I'm going to consider this valve lapped. But you really, you know, everybody wants to use tools and stuff to do what you already have the ability to do. All you have to do is know what to look for. So when you see that ring all the way around there, you know that's a shiny ring. And it's also the same ring is on the valve, okay, right here, right at the tip of my finger. You can see that shininess coming off the light. You know that you've got a seat and it's in the center of the valve. You don't want it to seat at the bottom or the top. You want it in the center, just roughly the same way that shiny little line is there. We're talking about a very minute thing here to look at, but that's what you want to look at. And for me, and I'm not going to be arguing with mechanics, for me this works. I'm not going to be arguing with machine builders. If you have machines to do this, or if you have a better way, be my guest, do it. This is what I do and this will work. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, this is done. You want to wipe this out really good. And before you go to spray this stuff, just so you know, before you spray, let me back up a little bit. Before you spray this on top of the valve to test the seat to see if it's going to hold the fluid back, before you do that, you want to make sure that you wipe all of the grit off of there that you can. Alright? Because when you spray this in here, if the grit's not off, it'll wash down in. Now in most cases, if it washes down in, it probably won't go in the valve guide hole, but it'll probably go to the side into the casting of the head. That's not really a big deal, but you should still wipe it off as best you can. Okay? And this is it. We're gonna turn this over, put the seals in, and it should be in good shape. Okay. Okay guys, I think you can also see that I'm using our test boards from the other day to set the head on. You don't want to put it on metal because it could gouge something, scratch something, so I have it on wood because the wood's not going to scratch anything. Alright, so here's how I get set up. I got this Chem Dip by Berryman. I love this stuff. I love the fact that the basket comes in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the old seal, even though I actually don't need the seal. I'm just going to set it to the side, but I'm going to take the keepers and the spring and whatever else comes with that first one. There's a flat washer or spacer, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to just soak that for a little bit. So after that soaks a little and I clean it off, I'm going to clean it with a brush, and then I'm going to clean it, or I'm going to blow it clean with air, and then I'm going to take it and put it back together. Okay, so when I put this thing together, then I'll be putting a new seal on. Now I've already showed you the seals. These are the intake seals, the valves for the intake, and these are the seals for the exhaust. Not much to it, but you know, it is what it is. When you go to put these on, you want to roll them down there nicely. Make sure that they don't have a roll in them once you put them around the valve, that they're nice and flat. So I'll show you that then as I go. Okay, so I soaked these parts, the spring, the cap there, this washer or shim, whatever it's supposed to be, and then the two keepers. Now I use a nylon old toothbrush to clean this stuff, so now I'm going to blow it dry with air, and then I'm going to put it back together. You want to make sure that all these, you do it one at a time so that you don't mix up parts. Okay, you want to keep everything that from the beginning to the end, you want to keep them all the same so that if there's any wear pattern to anything, it can stay that way. So I'll blow that out and then I'll start putting that back. Okay, so I've got this washer that goes on the bottom there, and I've not seen a lot of these on engines. I've seen spacers, but anyway, this one says this side against spring. So you can see there's a grooves in this side. This one says goes against the spring. So this goes on first, the spring goes on second, and the keeper or retainer goes on there third. Okay, so it goes on there as a set. Now once you put this on there, and I'm going to turn the head flat to do this and leave it overhang the table. Once you put that on there, that's when you compress the spring, and then you can put the two keepers back in after you put the seal on. The seal goes on this part of the valve, the keepers come up on this side. Okay, the seal's there, the keepers are up here. Let me just zoom in a little closer for that. So the valve seal, I don't know if this camera's focusing, my eyes are bad to begin with. The seal goes in the first groove, the keepers, or for the valve stem, go in the second groove. Okay guys, so the first valve is in there. The tool, this long pin that you see down here, is hitting the face of the valve. The spring is, you squeeze this handle to compress this. Alright, so now what you want to do here is you need to compress this a little bit further, because I need to see that first groove down in there. Now I can see it. I doubt if I can get this. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we want to put the seal on there onto that first groove. Now you want to be careful with the seal because there's hardly nothing to them, and you want to be careful what you use to push them down on there. I use a pick sometimes, but you know, you need to be careful with it that you don't cut these little rubber seals, because there's not a whole lot to these things. Let me see what you guys are seeing. Okay, so I have the little seal there. I think you can see that. Yeah, right there. So I'm going to put that over top of this, and I'm going to push it down onto that first groove. Now I can't really get my finger down in there, so I got to use something. So I have a screwdriver here that I can use. It's not going to hurt anything. You just don't want to force anything. Okay, you don't want to force it. And you want to make sure that that seal is flat all the way around there so that you know that you have that seal in there properly, that it's not twisted. That's important. So I'm going to relieve some tension on this. Now the seal is still in there, okay, and it's stuck around the shoulder of the valve stem. So now I'm going to put these retainers in here. Now what's going on here at the moment is, you know, I'm just pushing the spring that way because the spring has the tendency to want to come this way. And then I'm going to squeeze that. Now before I let this up all the way, I'll do one thing. So hold. Alright, so if you noticed, I put the seal on and it was basically dry. But now that I'm going to let this up, I'm going to get some oil to come up here. Now that I'm going to let this up, I'm going to put some oil on here because I want to make sure that that seal that's in there is going to slide on the retainer so it doesn't roll out of its pocket. Chances of it rolling out of the pocket are a little on the slim side, but sometimes it happens. Alright, so that's it. That one's done. Now before I'm finished with this, I'm going to take motor oil and I'm going to dump it all over this thing once I put the head back together before I put the valve cover on. Alright, but that little bit of oil in there helps to keep the seal. When you put the seal on dry, the seal's able to stay around the valve good. As you let off on the spring to be able to put the keepers in, if you put a little bit of oil there, the seal will slide up the retainer, and then it's a nice fit. Never had any problems with doing things like this, and this is how I do it. So just trying to share. Okay guys, so just to show you, let me see if you can see that. Right here, it's like an umbrella type thing or a mushroom cap. This is the seal that goes on an intake valve, exhaust valve, intake valve. Okay, so I've done the same thing that I did before, and that's what you want: repetition. Cleaned everything off, sitting there to dry. Leave the paper towel soak up whatever it can. I'll blow them off, and then I'll put them back together. Now right now I'm just taking and wiping the bottom of where that washer goes in here. I just want to make sure that it's clean. Now one of the things, you don't want to let the valves fall out of here when you take the keepers off and fall on the ground. So you need to have the seal handy so that you can put the seal on while you hold the valve up. So once you take the valve spring and stuff off and you take the tool away, the valve will fall out. So you want to be careful that the valve doesn't fall out. Now it's not going to use, they usually don't just drop out real easy, but they'll slowly creep down because there's sort of a tight fit there. They'll slowly creep down and then fall out. Well, you don't really want that. Okay, you don't want the valve falling on the ground, especially where I am. I have concrete on the floor here. You know, I often thought about putting all rubber down, but then I do welding and that won't work either. Okay, so there's our flat washer that goes on there. It looks like I can just dry this valve. I don't even have to blow it off. Or this valve spring. Surprisingly, they're not very dirty. I don't know if all diesels are like that, but I'm just surprised at that. Okay, and then this is the retainer that basically retains the spring with the help of the keepers that lock it in place. I just want to wipe the keepers off and put them close by me here. Alright, so I'm going to put that on top. Now when you go to put this tool on here, you got to release the tool. You want to make sure that the pin is on the valve, and you just push down a little bit to help get this thing started, and then you can pull down on this, and then you can put the keepers in place. Now on this one here, you don't necessarily need to have, in fact I don't even need to go that tight. Let me back up on this a little bit here. Yeah. So I'm going to put the keepers in. I'm pushing the spring that direction so I can get the keepers in place. You don't necessarily need oil in this one because it's not rubbing against the rubber. And that's it. Okay, so that's an intake valve that's ready to go. So 4 more of the same thing that you've just seen, and this thing will be ready to put on, although I got to clean it good. I want to clean the surfaces wherever the gaskets go. This surface over here, and the face. Really good. And I want to see what I can do about getting that back plate on here a little bit easier. So guys, I hope that was a little bit helpful for you as far as how to change the valve springs and stuff. Or not the springs, but the putting that other valve in and putting new seals on. You know, a lot of the guys said, yeah, put new seals on, put new seals on. But I need to tell you that when you look very closely at the old seal and the new seal, if you look inside there, there's grooves in that other seal, and it's a much thicker piece of rubber as opposed to this seal here, which has a thinner. In other words, from the top to the bottom of where the seal is, there's less rubber than there is on the old seal, the original one, that has a lot more on there. I mean, it's really a definite thickness. Anyway, we're going with the new. Hopefully it'll work. Guys, there's one other thing I just want to say as a little tip. When you put this tool on here and you go to compress the spring, when I was younger, I had a much better grip than I have now, that's for certain. So sometimes when I go to squeeze that, I can't squeeze it far enough to break the keepers free. So what I do then is I put tension on it, and then I take a rubber mallet. Now the tool would be on there, okay? I'll take a small socket, just not to interfere with anything there. And what I'll do is put my hand around the whole thing so it don't fly away, and give it a tap. And what that'll do is it'll usually let one of the keepers fly out into your hand. You want to be careful with that though, because if it goes flying and you're outside doing it, or wherever, you know, you might lose parts, and you can't afford to do that. So anyway, those 3 are done now. I'm going to just keep going. Okay guys, so she's all back together as far as the head goes now. All the new seals are in there. The new valves in, lapped in, and all I gotta do is clean it, and then we'll be ready to go. Well, you can see everything's wet, and it just stopped raining not long ago, so gotta see what happens here. I don't know, it's kind of blue sky a little bit, but I'm not going to do this today anyway. I'm going to work on it tomorrow, so I'm hoping tomorrow's going to be a better day. It's not that cold out either, so it should work out pretty good. Have a good one, guys. Thanks for watching.